All right, are we?
Yep.
Is my sound off? Because you know how that goes.
Yeah.
Does it? Am I playing? Why aren't I moving? You started it, right? Did I pause it? Oh wait, there we go. Why is it playing? I feel like I've turned into an old man, Eddie, that I can't do technology anymore. All right. Hope people are watching. Hello. Good evening. Welcome to another episode of, what are we calling it? Sewing Badly with Brent? The Four Pines Evening Show?
Yeah.
I don't know what we're calling it. But we're having fun. We're sewing and having a good time. So,
Danny says you're old, so I guess that's confirmed.
it has been confirmed. Okay. So, well, first off, let's start with shop news. We do have some kits come in. This cute little dinosaur kit. Isn't it special?
Whoa.
Isn't it special?
It glows in the dark.
It does glow in the dark, and there's a little bit of dinosaur applique with a panel, and I don't know. Do we have a price on these kits yet?
They're on the website.
They're on the website. Check them out online. You can buy one, order it, and we'll ship it out to you. The other thing that came in that I think is more, I don't know. I guess the dinosaurs are cute, but this nice little Christmas quilt kit came in. I don't know how I feel about the red truck. I cannot for the life of me figure out why the red pickup truck is such a thing. But this is a better picture of it. Is that the same one? Oh, that must be one of the blocks. Anyway, you can get an idea. It's a really cool, really neat kit. It's really cute. It's all in a box. And, you know, Riley Blake makes these super fancy boxes.
The dinosaurs are 72.
And this is probably, what, 200?
$139.95.
Oh, that's not a bad deal. This is a heavy box. I thought it was a $200 box, so $139 is a bargain. And the finished size of it, 74 by 83, so it's a good size quilt. So those are available on our website. Check them out. Pick it up, buy it, support the channel, as they say, you know, as we hawk our merch. So, as you're all joining me, apparently this has been popular because we're up another 15 subscribers this week. So our series this is going to be another episode in our series of the Shop Hop quilt. And if you're watching us from the future, hopefully it's edited and makes more sense. But last week, just to recap what we did for week one, we took the panel, cut all the panels into blocks. We haven't sized up the blocks yet. We might get to a little bit of that today because the blocks sized up nice. I did Maine and I got New Hampshire sized up. You guys, I've got a row done. We'll talk about that in a minute. Last week we made a 12.5-inch maple leaf block, and I made 2 of these so far. You're probably gonna need more than 2. And so then the other thing, as I was thinking about what we're going to do, we're going to make a bear paw to go with it. So we're going to have 2 blocks, basically, to finish this out. This maple leaf, and tonight we're going to talk about the bear paw. And then while I was making the bear paw, I was like, oh my gosh, it's just a maple leaf. Did you see how similar they are?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize it till I made it. But it'll make more sense when you see it. And here's what the bear paw is going to look like. I did a kind of a modified bear paw because I like the idea of leaving this empty, and it'll make more sense as we put the quilt together. But the other thing that by making this a small, instead of making, a lot of times in a standard bear paw, this is one solid square. By doing it with this smaller square, we can do everything with a 2.5-inch strip. We don't need anything bigger than 2.5-inch strips. And I'm not going to reveal the row yet. You have to wait. We'll go over the how to make the block. And then we'll do like a row reveal. This is the whole row. This is the New Hampshire row. I got it done. And we'll go over why things are measured the way they are when we get there. Any questions before we jump into it? No? No questions? Okay. So, like I said, we're going to make this bear paw. And we're going to do it with 2.5-inch strips. So all you need is a 2.5-inch strip of your 2 colors. Very simple. It's going to be almost identical to what we did for our maple leaf. And so here we have 2.5-inch strips. And then the first thing we need to do, I guess we should go to the overhead view so we can show people how much fun this is. Like the maple leaf, what we need to do is cut 4. We're going to need 4 half square triangles. And if you use your easy angle, you can cut everything out of a 2.5 inch strip. If you're one of those people that doesn't use an easy angle, which I'm going to show you real quick how to do this. If you don't use an easy angle, you may have to go wider strips depending on the technique you're going to use. But you'll need 4 2.5 inch. What am I saying, Eddie?
I don't know.
4 2.5 inch.
4 2.5 inch.
Half square triangles.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. So, what we want to do, now that I'm looking at this, I'm like befuddled. So all we're going to do is drop our easy angle on there. 2.5 inches right up top. So we just have that lined up. So that's our first one. Oh, I'm doing this probably backwards from the way this. There's one. And then we're going to rotate this down. Oh, that's why I'm having trouble, because I'm doing it from the wrong side. There, that makes more sense to me. So then we're going to come down. If you're watching this, that was like the left-handed way to do it, I think. And all you do to get your half square triangles is we're just lining that up there. This is an easy angle. Creative Grids makes a very similar tool. Like I said, this is the tool I use for just about everything I sew. And all I'm going to do is glue those 4 times. And if you want to change the size of your Bearpaw, you can. For this quilt, we're doing 2.5 inch strips because that's going to give us a 6.5 unfinished or 6 inch finished block. And it'll start to make sense here in a minute. The other, so you'll need 4 half square triangles, which we have cut here. You're going to need one of the Bearpaw color, which is the dark, a 2.5 inch strip of that. Did I bring my other ruler, Eddie?
There's a big easy angle right there.
That's not going to work.
I
What's that?
don't think we got it.
Oh, and you left it on the overhead, so I can't like run away. Here, go quick, go grab it. I'm going to model my hands. Just grab me the giant one. Woo, woo. Eddie's grabbing me the ruler, and so that we don't have dead space, I'm modeling my hands. It's very exciting. Okay. So what we're going to do is now we're just going to, from this, we need a 2.5 inch square. You're going to need 2 2.5 inch squares of your background color, which is that, and one of your Bearpaw color. So I need another one of these. Now you could probably use the same technique here that we're going to do to make the maple leaves we made last week, because last week we just used squares for everything. But for the Bearpaw, instead of cutting 2 2.5 inch squares for the center there, I am just going to cut one 4.5 by 2.5 rectangle. And you'll see why here in a minute. Because if you'll remember, what we did, like I said, you're going to find that this pattern is very similar. See how these three are 3 separate squares? For the Bearpaw, we're cutting a 4.5 inch instead of 2 squares. I like cutting the squares out for this bigger one because it really, because of the large print, it really adds something to it. If this was one piece of fabric, you wouldn't have that seam breaking it up, and it might look wouldn't look quite as good. I don't think. Okay. So, everything's cut. We have our 4 half square triangles. We have our 2 background squares. And then we're also going to have our 4.5 by 2.5 rectangle and a 2.5 inch square. Now we're just going to sew this stuff together. Now, unlike last week, I think our machine is ready to go right now. Right?
Revolutionary.
Yeah, prepared. Look at us go. Woohoo. And all I'm going to do is, first I'm going to make my 2.5 inch, half square triangles. Going to feed those through. And like I said, there's other techniques for half square triangles. There's some where you make them oversized and then you cut them down, and that gives you a more precise one. But for the kind of stuff we're doing, we're just, this is good enough. And I'm actually going to sew these 2 together as well, just because we know where they're going to go. All right. And there we go. And all I'm doing now is just turning these apart, trimming these apart. And let's go back over here. Hope you're all enjoying the background music. Eddie is serenading us with some classical guitar this evening, which is actually kind of a nice little bonus. I would encourage you all to check out the latest Frogs album, Paloma, which Eddie dropped last week. There are some good songs on it. I'm not just saying that because I'm his dad. There's actually songs that, if I wasn't his dad, I would probably also listen to. I think that's a compliment, right, Eddie?
I think so.
And I'm not really paying attention if I'm going light or dark. Out of habit, I tend to press towards the dark. But in this case, it's not really going to matter because of how these squares go together. So it's not like you have to lock the seams in or anything. So I'm just doing that, and I'm going to press that one towards the dark as well. And then we're going to press, where'd the other one go that we did? Where'd it go, Eddie? Oh, it's right there. We already pressed it. We pressed that to the, I guess I pressed that to the light. Oh well. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do real quick is with the easy angle, you always get dog ears on one side. I used to say don't worry about them, because I'm that sloppy of a quilter. But even I, as a sloppy, lazy quilter, think that you should be cutting these dog ears off. It'll make it easier in the long run. As easy as it is not to, I think for as quick as it goes and the benefit is it's worth it to trim them off. So if you're a lazy quilter like I was, you want to do that. So now we're just going to lay this out so you can kind of see what this is going to look like. And then we're going to sew it together. Like I said, it's very, very similar to the maple leaf we made last week, except that it's half the size. And it'll all start to make sense when I show you what I've come up with for a quilt. Okay, we're going to sew that now. So that's the block, and we're just going to sew that together real quick. So I knew I wanted to make bear paws in maple leaves. That's kind of what my plan was for the quilt. I had no idea what I was doing with them. I just knew that those were going to be the blocks I was going to throw in with everything. So as I was making this, it all started to kind of come together what I wanted to do with it. And now I actually have a pretty good idea. I don't know what the quilt's going to look like, but I have an idea of the direction we're going. And I'll show you the first row. I got the New Hampshire row done today. I'm going to walk through why it is the way it is. We probably won't go over sewing that row because we've got 6 more rows to make. So the process is going to be similar to all the rows. But I am going to explain the design elements or why I came up with what I did and where we're going with it. Oh wait, I forgot to sew that on. I can't before I get out my whatchamadingy. Right? We want to sew that to there. And then we'll press it all. Oh, dang it. And y'all, this is what I know you all sign up for, is to watch me thread the machine. Because guess what we got to do, Eddie?
Oh, thread the needle?
Yep. So, it's easier for a rich man to go through for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to get into heaven, right? Isn't that the saying?
I don't think I've heard that saying.
You've never heard that saying? That's like in the Bible, isn't it? Am I going that way? Or I can never remember. Oh, it's right. It goes bass backwards. Am I allowed to say that on YouTube?
I think so.
Okay. And so the popular interpretation of always was that there was this gate in Jerusalem that was like the eye of the needle. And that's what he meant. It's hard for the camels to go through it. That's like always, but there is some evidence to suggest that that was made up by Christian apologists and that Jesus was actually saying, basically, the rich dude's not going to get into heaven. Did you know that?
I did not.
Because one of the things, apparently, is if you read Mark, he's all about eat the rich. But anyway, that's a complete side note. But if you were raised religious and you've heard that before, and you were like went to Sunday school and they told you, oh, because there's a gate in Jerusalem that's called the Eye of the Needle, and camels had to get down on one knee and go through. There is actually, they think that may just be something that was made up by some monk, and that now what you want to do here is you want to see how I iron pressed that seam going that direction, which I guess doesn't really matter. I want to go in the opposite direction with this because this is the two seams I'm going to lock in. So I want to go that way with that one. And then with this one here, I want to go the opposite direction because we're going to lock our seams in. And that's the only time I'm really paying attention when I'm putting this block together of which direction I'm pressing, is I'm just making sure that these three seams are pressed, or these two seams are pressed opposite of that one so that they lock in when I sew them. Okay. Now, we're making good time tonight, Eddie, because we were prepared, we had the machine set up. We're going to have this thing done and pressed, and we're probably even going to get into the row and keep it to the half hour that we've been trying to keep it to because we don't want to bore people to death. But that means to keep our watch times up, you all have to watch this twice. But anyway. And so
why would the Eye of the Needle be a gate?
Well, that's what, because it was a really small gate. So, you know, like one of the big city gates, like in the good old days of the city states. Like the whole point of a city was the fact that it was fortified, and you had to like go to market, and you had to go to market, and so it was like a side gate, not the main gate. So it was small. But this is the story. But a camel could go through it if the camel got down on its knees and walked. So they're saying that quote comes from the fact that a camel could go through the eye of the needle, the gate, if it tried really hard. But it's thought that that's Christian apologists because you know why? Okay, here's where I'm going to get into trouble. Because like the early church was like super rich. Like early like Christian leaders were like super rich, and do you think they wanted to get like, so you've got this super rich like monk or priest, like watch the Three Musketeers, like the whole cardinal versus the king type thing. So you've got this super rich, this guy that's trying to justify the church that he supports as having a ton of money, has a ton of money, so he's trying to justify it, and so he makes up this thing that yes, even rich people can go to heaven. But you have that quote to contend with, so then he makes up this thing about the eye of the needle. Which, at the end of the day, really, I think what Jesus was saying, if you die with all that money, you did something wrong, you know?
Yeah.
Be a decent human being and use your stuff for good. But that's a whole other story. And am I allowed to talk about religion? I guess we can. Anyway. So, that's our block. Should I hold it up? Look at our beautiful block. Whoa. Okay, so when we started, and I'm going to do all of these blocks the same, because one of the things I'm trying to figure out is if you've seen the collection of fabric that this all comes from, that yellow is very questionable. And what am I going to do with that yellow? But it looks good with this brown. This brown, by the way, is just a Benartex fossil fern, just a basic Benartex, but it has that nice kind of leafy texture, so it looks really good with it. Unlike the maple leaves, where I'm going to probably do a bunch of different colors for leaves, the Bearpaw, I'm going to do all the same color because my plan is to put bear tracks on my quilt. All right, here is the first row. Are you all ready for the great reveal? You think they're ready, Eddie? I already showed Eddie, and he's like, that's going to be a huge quilt. And he's right. So this is the first row. Is it all on there?
Yep, it fits perfectly.
It fits perfectly. So, this is not going to be the top row. This is actually the second row. Did you know that, Eddie?
No.
The first row is going to be main, because I decided that we're going to put this together kind of like how it looks on the map. So if you'll notice, I don't know if this is a mirror image. You got New Hampshire here.
Oh, is that why it's so wide? So you can...
Yeah, so New Hampshire is going to be here. Maine is going to be the first row up in the corner. All right, so let's
Alright.
let's do it. I
see
think
what you-
I think we'll have to go overhead so I can explain this. Okay, so go to the overhead view.
John says quilters have to get rid of all their fabric to fit through the eye of the needle.
This is true. So what we're gonna do is as we go, we're gonna actually put main. This is oh, let me turn it around. Main is gonna be the top row, and it's gonna be up in this corner. Because if you look at a map, where did I put main? Main goes right up here. And so the next row after New Hampshire is gonna be Vermont. We're just gonna kind of work our way down a map from north to south. So you can kind of see, well, let me pull that down so you can kind of see the direction we're going with this. Now, what I have decided is 12 and a half and 6.5 is our going to be our measurements. One of the problems is Maine. If you're doing this in the future and you're squaring stuff up, Maine squares up to 14.5 inches, right?
Yup.
So 14.5 is bigger than, guess what, Eddie?
It's bigger than 12 and a half?
It's bigger than 12.5.
Whoa.
But it's still there's nothing that's gonna be bigger than Maine. And so what's 12.5 plus 6.5, Eddie?
19.
19 minus a ½ inch for your seam allowance, 18.5. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make Maine 18.5 inches tall. So we're gonna add a strip of fabric to the bottom, or maybe we'll do a strip bottom and a strip top. I haven't decided yet how we're gonna do this. And we're gonna make this out to be 18.5. So what that's gonna let us do now is, if you'll notice here on this row, you see how what we did is we just took 2 of the fabrics, and I went with 6.5 because you see 6.5 really takes advantage of these bigger prints. We can really get a lot out of these bigger prints. So that's our and the reason I did, and then over here on our Bearpaws, all I did was alternate kind of 4-patch with our 2 strip patterns. So what we're going to be doing now, the rest of the rows are going to kind of go together. We're going to have a Bearpaw, a Bearpaw and a maple leaf on every row, and then we're going to separate the Bearpaw, the maple leaf, and the States with 6.5 inch strip sets. But for example, with Maine, instead of doing 2 strips, we're going to do 3 strips. So far, so good. People following? Have I lost anybody yet? See, this all came into my head while I was putting this together, so you can all see. Now, if you'll notice, this is there's a few measurements on here. The big measurement I started with is this here is a 18 and a half. Here, do a. So this piece right here, this strip set, I cut at 18 and a half. And do you know why I cut it at 18 and a half, Eddie?
Because that's the 12 and a half plus 6.5 minus half.
Yes, but why would I want that here?
Because you're gonna put the.
I'm going to take these. See how these Bearpaws are here? This Bearpaw is going to run diagonal up the quilt,
Oh.
and so that means I need to put 3 more Bearpaws because the main's going to be the top row. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when we get the main row done, what's going to happen is these Bearpaws are going to continue up into the corner. So the only thing that I really care about when I'm going to start making my rows, the only real thing that I have to worry about to add cohesiveness to the quilt is make sure that my Bearpaws end up where I want them to, so that they walk across my quilt. And I don't know. See, the problem is I don't think we have enough rows to go. We'll see. That much made sense. I don't know. It makes sense so far, but I think we're going to run into problems. I already can picture them in my head. But so you can kind of see this is going to be a huge quilt. I mean, this is just one row. We still have to add borders and a few other things, and we're going to add main. It's got a ways to go, but you can kind of see what it's going to look like. So you either all think it's going to be awesome and to tune in for more to figure out how to get here, or you're like, that is ugly. I've seen enough. I'm done. But if you're watching in the future, you're going to probably have seen the whole entire quilt done. So that's what the New Hampshire row is going to look like, which gives us that bit. We now know how long our rows are, and like I said, Maine I believe is going to be the biggest block, and I've already got that one figured out. So it's all going to kind of come together. So next week, what we're going to actually do, because you've already seen how to make the maple leaf. You saw us cut this up, and we just made the Bearpaws. Next week, we're going to go over how to figure out how big to make. We're going to make a strip set, and we're going to go over how to figure out how big to make the strip set so that it all comes together. Make sense? Are you excited? Is everybody else excited?
Do you draw this out as you think about the layout?
Oh, heck no. This all came to me while I was ironing my Bearpaw. I had an idea what I wanted, kind of the walk through the creative process. I knew that I wanted to do a maple leaf and Bearpaw blocks because I really thought that those kind of have a nice New England feel to them. And they're fairly easy blocks to make, and you can have some fun with them. So that's why I made a maple leaf last week. I just knew that that would look good with what we're doing, and it kind of fit the theme. And I knew this week I wanted to do Bearpaws, but when I was trying to figure out how big to make the Bearpaw, I didn't want to go huge because then they would compete with the maple leaf. And if you look at a typical Bearpaw block, is actually 4 paws around a middle. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to look like a bear walked across the quilt, figuratively speaking, because there's no bear. So I knew that I wanted to make them smaller. And I figured we already had a 12.5, so let's go 6.5, which uses 2.5-inch strips. And my thought process was, I still have no idea how big these are. I have no idea how big these are, but when I first did the Bearpaws, I was like, I know that I can get these into 2.5-inch increments so that everything will fit horizontally. And then after I made them, I'm like, we're gonna go 6.5. And it all makes sense next week as I start bringing it together. But yeah, it all just kind of comes to me as I'm working. There's no, I'm not somebody that sketches stuff out. I know some people, their creative process is they sketch it out and then they construct what they sketched. For me, it's more of a, it's more of a kind of a fluid process. I've got an idea of the components that I'm working with and what I'm thinking, and as I start to bring the components together, it kind of takes shape on its own. So, I don't know if that makes any sense. Well, the other thing too about sketching it out, because that's a good point, Gene. A lot of people sketch it out. I am going to change this up on the fly. What I have in my mind might not actually make sense once I get it going. I'm like, this isn't working, and so I'll change directions halfway through. I do this a lot with a lot of these type of quilts. I'm kind of committed to the first 2 rows with this, the way this is going, and I think it's going to work for the rest of them. But I have run into quilts where it made sense for like a couple rows, and like it all falls apart, and then you kind of. What I've done in those cases actually is I'll actually chop the row. I've chopped rows in half and then skewed them to make it all work. But it's one of those, I make it up as I go along, but I've got an idea of the direction we're going now. So I'm from a creative standpoint, I very much just start down the road to see where it goes, and if it takes a right or a left-hand turn, or there's an intersection and I have to make a choice, I just kind of when I get there, I make the decision. Any other questions? Yes, you have to get rid of all the fabric. This is true. Now I have to go home and look that up, Eddie, because I was just making that up as I was talking, but I remember seeing that somewhere.
Yeah.
Like I said, I knew the eye of the needle thing. If Grandma was watching, Grandma will remember she's probably one that taught me that, because Grandma, smart like that.
Yeah.
But something I was reading, like that it's actually a Christian, because of the idea that they were trying to justify having all the wealth. So if Jesus is like, you can't get into heaven if you're rich, and you're a rich person and you want to keep your money,
Yeah.
you got to come up with a way to make that work. And that's the theory on it, which is interesting because, like I said, read the Gospel of Mark a little bit more closely, and it's a very interesting, iconoclastic book of scripture, as it were. The message may be different than you've been told if you read it word for word. It's very interesting. Anyway. Oh, sketch and pen, yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much all we have for tonight. I hope you all got something out of it. And like I said, if you're watching this in the future, hopefully we edit it and it makes more sense. But, so those are going to be the 2 blocks. Is the maple leaf that we did last week at a 12.5, and Bearpaws that we did this week at 6.5. The maple leaves, well, I'm going to kind of mix and match those fabrics up because I just kind of want a random effect there. The Bearpaw, I'm going to do them all in the colors that I just did it in because that's the consistency I want in the quilt. One of the things I like about quilt is I like a scrappy quilt, but I also like to have some bit of cohesiveness to it that gives it some structure, so it's not just scraps. That's why I love the Cheese and Crackers quilt by Atkinson's Design, because it's scrappy, but the way that it's laid out, there's a consistency to the design. So the idea is that the Bearpaws coming across the quilt will give us kind of the structure that kind of brings it all together, whereas the randomness of the leaves and and I mean, the states themselves will be kind of random on the rows, but there's going to be a little structure there, but the true structure comes from the Bearpaws. But anyway, next week we'll put together the main row, because I will get the stuff made to do that, and then we'll put that together. That's going to be interesting. I've got an idea how it's going to look, but that we're going to kind of embark on the process with me, because that I've got it pictured in my mind, but I'm going to wait till next week to even start it, so that you can all kind of watch the struggle in real time. So, thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll tell your friends about it so they can watch the struggle next week too with us, and so on, and be excellent to each other.